Good morning. The Committee on Regulatory Reform will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Present.
Representatives Liberati.
Here.
Neely. Here. Scott. Young. Here. Grant. McFall.
Here.
Snyder.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Mueller.
Here.
Filler. Wenzel. Here. Aragona.
Here.
Bierlein.
Here.
Nair.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Rep. Wilson moves to adopt the minutes from the June 20th meeting. Seeing no objections, the minutes are adopted. Today we'll be taking testimony on House Bills 4562 and 4177. We also will be voting out House Bills 4600, 4601, and Senate Bills 262 and 268. We will not be taking any action on House Bill 4717 at today's meeting. So with that, I'd like to welcome Representative Coleman to speak about his House Bill 4562.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair Carter, Majority Vice Chair Liberati, as well as Minority Vice Chair Mueller, for taking up this important legislation, my Right to Repair Bill, also known as the Digital Electronic Equipment Repair Act. This is a reintroduction of the same bill I introduced last session and closely mirrors New York's recently passed Digital Fair Repair Act. Simply put, my bill would require certain manufacturers of digital electronic equipment to make diagnostic, maintenance, parts, tools, and documentation available to their independent repair providers and owners of that equipment. Digital electronic equipment means a product that depends for its functioning in whole or in part on digital electronics embedded in or attached to the product. Devices such as laptops, computers, or cell phones. This is something I've heard from many constituents that this is sorely needed. There has been a groundswell of support for such legislation in other states such as Colorado, the one previously mentioned in New York, and just recently Minnesota have passed right to repair laws. Enacting this legislation is not only good for consumers, small businesses, and third-party repair shops, but the environment as well. Electronic waste is becoming a global concern due to single-use electronics, and this legislation would help to cut down on this waste while providing the opportunity for local economies and small businesses to increase their bottom lines. While there was significant pushback with right to repair legislation when I originally started working on this, companies such as Apple and Samsung have recently acquiesced to demands in other states for allowing for third-party repairs of certain devices. We spent the summer working with stakeholders, and the bill in its current form provides carve-outs for manufacturers of medical equipment, boilers, water heaters, and hot water tanks due to the original manufacturers being the only ones who can repair such equipment. My bill also exempts the alarm industry. The Alarm Industry Communications Committee had some significant concerns which I considered. This committee rightfully has significant security concerns with alarm codes and the potential access to codes from bad actors or hackers. In addition, only the manufacturers are able to repair alarms if the need arises. Home appliances are also exempt, as are products of service of a motor vehicle manufacturer of motor vehicle equipment, or a motor vehicle dealer. My bill does not include agricultural equipment. That's a separate bill. There's still a few more conversations with additional stakeholders to be had. We're open to talking to them, and there may be additional exemptions and changes to this bill going forward. With me this morning on Zoom, I have Gay Gordon Byrne, Executive Director from the Repair Association, as well as Kevin O'Reilly, who is a board member for Repair.org, and former Right to Repair Campaign Director for the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, here to provide testimony. They also have brought along Jason Blau from SEI and Paul Roberts from SecureRepairs.org. In addition, John Prendergast from the Alarm Industry Communications Committee is here, who also brought Anthony Sharpie from Guardian Alarm. Thank you, Mr. Chair and the committee. I appreciate you hearing my testimony today.
Thank you, Representative Coleman. Do we have any questions? Representative Filler?
Thank you, Chair. If you could just give me what exactly this bill does. I mean, I don't see if I want to, work on my phone. That's a little more difficult. I pull the screen off or something and fiddle around, but I assume I can do that. Can I not right now?
If you take it to a third-party repair shop, the manual documentation and parts will most likely not be available to that third-party shop. There's a lot of manufacturers of electronic equipment who they seclude that from third parties. So those parts and equipment may not be available.
So would this
that's
lead
the
to?
issue.
Oh, sorry, a follow-up, Chair, with your permission. Sure. Would this lead to, I don't know, companies having to share their numbers and their design codes with individuals or other shops?
No, I don't think so. That's something I would probably let some of my other people testifying answer, though.
Representative Argona?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Rep. Coleman, for being here. I kind of have, I'm going to admit, it's a bit of a naive question, and it's a little tangential. In a previous career, I was doing purchasing for an electronic repair firm, and one of the jobs that we were trying to accomplish was to actually repair a windmill. It was a complicated device. I don't believe there's a lot of proprietary tech within that windmill. However, we couldn't get the schematics from, I don't know if it was GE or another company, and it was cost prohibitive to investigate to try and basically reverse engineer what was going on within this device. So without the schematic, we just said, yeah, we can't do it. However, we're pretty sure we could have done it cheaper than going back to the OEM. Would this cover a device like that? Is this getting to bigger industrial equipment such as windmills that could actually save on energy costs?
I believe it would. Yes, I think so. Yeah, I might have to follow up with you to make sure, but I believe it would.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Rep. Filler?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. Is it the sponsor's intent to exempt construction equipment and recreational vehicles from this bill?
That's not something I've considered yet, but we can have that conversation.
Okay. I have seen that other states did exclude those from their bills.
Okay.
But just wanted to share that with you. Thanks,
Sure.
Chair.
Thank you. So, wishing to speak in support of, we have John Pendergrass, Alarm Industry. Is he here? Jason Blow, SEI. Oh, he's on Zoom. Everybody else is on Zoom. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes because we've got quite a few that want to, and I'm sure there'll be some overlap. But whenever you're ready, press the red button, give us your name, and proceed.
I'm here representing the Monitoring Association and the related Alarm Industry Communications Committee, or AICC, made up of most of the larger central station monitoring businesses, but also with its membership through the Security Industry Association, the manufacturers of alarm equipment, and through the Electronic Security Association, which is a member of smaller alarm service providers and dealers. On behalf of all these entities, I want to thank this committee for the opportunity to provide input on this very important aspect of the right to repair legislation. I want to make it clear that AICC does not oppose Michigan's effort to foster the right to repair with regard to most consumer devices. However, it is vital that an exception be recognized for devices that protect safety, because they can be compromised if certain information about these devices fall into the wrong hands. The amended language introduced by Representative Coleman wisely recognized the needs to balance consumer convenience with life safety. when it comes to alarm monitoring and introduces the necessary language to protect this function. Importantly, the state of New York also recognized the need for an alarm exemption when passing its groundbreaking Digital Fair Repair Act at the end of 2022 by adding an express alarm exemption in chapter amendments adopted in January. And the state of California has incorporated an alarm exemption into its pending right to repair legislation, which has passed the Senate and is awaiting vote in the Assembly, that is SB 244. Michigan is another important state that the rest of the country looks to in assessing significant issues like this. We urge this body to enact the same sort of alarm exemption to demonstrate that consumer protections can be enacted without jeopardizing the safety of the public. Alarm systems detect life-threatening risks such as fire, intrusion, dangerous carbon monoxide levels, and medical alerts. Without an exemption for electronic security and life safety systems, alarm manufacturers and other members of the industry would be forced to disclose to customers and third-party contractors the passwords, access codes, schematics, and other sensitive information about their alarm systems. Once made public, this information can be used not only to later disable the alarm system of the customer who has arranged for the repair, but also similar alarm systems throughout the state of Michigan and throughout the country. In essence, the bad guys will be handed a blueprint that can be used to defeat all similar alarm systems. These access codes, schematics, and other information may find their way to the dark web because the consumer or their hired contractor are sloppy about storing this information, which will eventually be hacked. Unfortunately, each of us has experienced this dynamic as our personal information has not been properly protected even by banks, credit agencies, or the federal government, so it is unlikely that consumers and contractors will be immune to hacking. Moreover, if a target is of high enough value, such as a bank, defense installation, public utility, or nuclear power plant, it is entirely conceivable that terrorists, foreign governments, or organized crime will go through the trouble of establishing a seemingly legitimate repair contractor business in order to gain the ability to compromise the protection of these valuable facilities. Either way, if access codes, passwords, or alarm schematics are either hacked or innocently made public, such as through a YouTube self-help video, it could allow bad actors to shut down entire alarm systems, endangering tens or hundreds of thousands of Michigan residents and potentially millions nationwide. These dangers would not just affect the consumer that mishandled the information, but the public at large. Therefore, it is vital that the alarm exemption included in Representative Coleman's draft to the Right to Repair bill be adopted. Thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to introduce Anthony Sharpie of Guardian Alarm, an alarm service provider headquartered in Southfield, Michigan. We will then be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I think he took up most of your time, Anthony. But I'll give you a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify this morning. Again, my name is Anthony Sharpie with Guardian Alarm. I'm the Director of Product Development, and I make the decisions on the technology that we use. Guardian Alarm has over 500 employees, 350 of which reside in the state of Michigan. And we've got just under 100,000 accounts that we protect. So lots of residents, businesses throughout the state. We offer monitoring services related to intrusion, security, video monitoring, fire monitoring, personal safety monitoring, and access control systems. We protect the likes of banks, jewelry stores, large corporations, independent businesses, hospitals, utilities. I can go on, residential sites all across the board. Based on the type of monitoring service that a customer requires, Guardian Alarm receives a number of different types of alarms to protect our customer safety and assets. These alarms come from burglar alarm systems or video alarm systems where upon receiving an alarm, our monitoring center contacts local authorities directly with the Michigan Public Safety Answering Points, also known as PSAPs, to dispatch appropriate assistance. whether that is police from an attempted burglary to holdup, or fire department or emergency medical services for smoke detectors, or carbon dioxide is detected. We also receive alarms from certain video systems, and I think video is a crucial technology to consider here as well, where we can proactively intervene at the first sign of threat and prevent crimes from happening. All of these devices require unique passcodes only known by Guardian Alarm and the customer, with specific configurations to properly deliver the service. It allows us to secure the system for the customer but maintain consistent operation. It becomes even more important when video is involved. If this legislation is passed and doesn't include the alarm exemption, we run a high risk of compromising hundreds of thousands of customers' security, and that increases greatly. Unique passcodes would need to be revealed to third parties, schematics of buildings, placements of cameras, access control points to show their vulnerabilities of these customer locations, and this includes access to video. 90% of the video that we install is IP-based, connected to the network. And if a bad actor were to go in and set up their own little IP address, they could remotely access at any time, watch behaviors, whatever they need to do. So it could be used to even disable, the DIY customer systems in the future. But similar alarm equipment used in homes, businesses, and government facilities and other sensitive locations. So I could go on and, you could use your imagination. A lot of bad things can happen. And while Guardian Alarm does not oppose the right to repair efforts, it's vital that a reasonable exemption of alarm systems and devices be included in the Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? None? Thank you. Next, we have wishing to speak, and we've got a timer up here. Stephen Rapondals? Is that close? Oh, that's an O. Got it. All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Stephen Rapundolo, President and CEO of the Michigan Biosciences Industry Association, or MishBio, and I'm also here on behalf of our national partners, the Advanced Medical Technology Association, the Medical Device Manufacturers Association, and the Medical Imaging and Technology Alliance. And collectively, our membership comprises the full spectrum of health technology innovators and manufacturers, both here in Michigan and across the country. And our top priority of our manufacturers is really about patient safety. And this legislation prevents putting patients in Michigan at an increased risk of harm or death. The OEMs in our industry are subject to very strict regulations by the FDA to ensure patient safety. They protect the safety and efficacy of the medical devices that patients interface with, and this includes registration, mandated registration with the FDA, implementation of quality and safety controls and proper training and qualification of replacement parts. And independent third-party providers are not held to the same standards. In fact, in 2018, a report by the FDA found that more than 4,300 adverse events, including 294 serious injuries and 40 deaths from devices repaired by unauthorized third-party providers. So these complex issues are accounted for in federal legislation known as the Fair Repair Act, a right to repair bill that provides full exemption for medical device manufacturers. And so we greatly appreciate the sponsor for recognizing the need to exempt medical devices and medical device manufacturers in the bill. Similarly has been introduced this past session in Washington, and as the sponsor noted, recently signed into law in New York and Minnesota. So we greatly appreciate the sponsor working with our concerns, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? No. Thank you for your testimony. On Zoom, wishing to speak in support of the bill, we have Jason Blow, representing SEI. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairman and committee. And thank you, Gay Gordon Byrne, for allowing me to come out and speak to you today. Speaking on behalf in a long-term friend and donator to Right to Repair, I come at it from a slightly different angle, which is really consumer choice. And I grew up in an independent auto shop, and it was always a great joy and pleasure to be able to help people repair what they have versus having to go out and buy new. And people in most areas of their life are able to have choice in what they can repair, who can repair it, and to increase the longevity of their assets. And it's been talked at length about cell phones and tablets and everything else. But where I come from today is that what is kind of unnoticed by most in the public is the gears that turn the economy exist in the data centers and the offices of our businesses and companies. And over time, their choice has been eroded of how they can repair their phones, how they can repair their phone systems, how they can repair their servers, their storage devices, and their network. And multiple strategies have been put in place over time to decrease that choice. And what it really means is that companies not having that choice to be able to repair their devices on their own or to be able to select an alternate provider means that they have to spend money and make investments that they wouldn't normally have to if they had more choice. This disproportionately affects small businesses and enterprises that might not have the expertise themselves, which are then forced into a cycle of purchasing new equipment on a calendar that they can't really control. So we believe that, in Right to Repair, it's not so much about, the security, and it's not so much about, detrimental effects to a very large organization outside of Michigan, but it really affects enterprises inside of Michigan and across the country on their ability to choose how long they keep their devices, how long they keep their software, and where they have to spend money to refresh that environment that they wouldn't normally have to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? No. Next, we have wishing to speak in support of the bill, Paul Roberts from Secure Repairs.
Hey, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And thank you so much for this committee considering this legislation. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Paul Roberts, and I'm the founder of a group called Secure Repairs. We're an organization of more than 350 cybersecurity and information technology professionals who support the right to repair. And I'm speaking to you today on behalf of our members to make clear that laws such as Michigan House Bill 4562 and other right to repair laws do not increase cyber risk. In fact, passing legislation like this can contribute to a healthier and more secure ecosystem of smart devices, smart homes, the Internet of Things, as we refer to it. Just to be clear, and I think it's important to keep this in mind as you hear people speaking both for and against it, legislation like Michigan House Bill 4562, considered by this committee, simply ask that manufacturers that already provide repair information and tools to their authorized repair providers also provide them at a fair and reasonable price to the owners of the devices and to third parties that those owners may wish to hire, so independent repair shops. By definition, the information covered by a law like this is not sensitive or protected, and that's evidenced by the fact that the manufacturers already distributed it widely to hundreds or thousands of repair professionals working on behalf of their authorized providers. That could include everything from auto mechanics working at an auto dealership, in the case of auto repair, to hourly workers staffing the Geek Squad at Best Buy. So again, the types of information, schematic diagrams, service manuals, access to software tools used to diagnose and fix issues are already widely distributed. They are not sensitive and protected. Also, we have yet to find any evidence that the types of information covered by laws like this act as a portal to cyber attacks. A vast majority of attacks on internet connected devices, and I have been in the cybersecurity space for more than 2 decades, come from exploitation of weak device configurations or software vulnerabilities in embedded software that is produced, managed, and released by the manufacturers themselves. They do not come from, hackers are not reading service manuals to hack into home routers and webcams. They're not using diagnostic software or schematic diagrams. They are exploiting software vulnerabilities in the code released and produced by the manufacturer, or vulnerable configurations for devices. That's how hacks of connected devices happen. And these security weaknesses are epidemic. In fact, a recent study by a company named Phosphorus Labs, they're a cybersecurity company, found that 68% of Internet of Things devices contained high risk or critical software vulnerabilities. And that's just an important fact to keep in mind. There is an epidemic of insecure connected devices. It has nothing to do with the right to repair. We know that because we see the evidence of these hacks every day, and yet there is no broad right to repair connected devices. So the problem really rests with the manufacturers and the low quality of the software that they're shipping to consumers, because there is no real consequence for them to ship buggy, vulnerable, hackable software. No economic consequences, no legal consequences, nothing. So hacks like this take place without any access to repair materials, and there's no evidence that providing repair materials will increase cyber risk. So
can you wrap this up for us?
Yes, I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, because we've got about 10 other speakers, and I want to be respectful and give them the opportunity as well.
I understand. What I'd like to say is, as the Internet of Things ages and manufacturers step away from their responsibility to support and maintain deployed products, new laws such as Michigan House Bill 4562 will foster a market-based response, a diverse ecosystem of small aftermarket service providers that can step into the shoes of manufacturers and supply software updates, security patches, service, and repair for deployed devices, and so on. And this will really foster a range of business opportunities in Michigan residents and small businesses. I really urge you on behalf of our members to move forward and pass this legislation, and it will have a huge beneficial impact for the Michigan economy, Michigan households, and small businesses. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have in this hearing regarding cybersecurity and repair. Thanks.
Seeing no questions, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Kevin O'Reilly from repair.org, followed by Guy Gordon Byrne, repair.org, and Benjamin Ingerwurst. He's not on. Okay, cool. In support.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kevin O'Reilly. I'm a right to repair advocate and currently a board member of the Repair Association, repair.org. So, as we've talked about, device owners and independent repair shops can get what they need to fix stuff when it breaks, right? Whether that's parts, tools, information, schematics, those kind of things. And I want to talk a little bit just briefly about what that means for the environment, as well as what it means for small businesses and consumers. So first of all, we have an electronic waste problem in the United States. Across the country, we produce some 6.9 million tons of electronic waste every single year, with Michigan households contributing 230 million tons to that every single year, right? And that's not because, purely because people are just being wasteful. It's because often repair isn't as good of an option. It's not something they can easily do. Now, that's the end of the life cycle, right? If you look at the other stages of the life cycle, the environmental impacts continue to pile up. So, for example, at the beginning of the creation of any sort of device, right, there's the extraction of raw materials. And if you think about, a 4.5 ounce iPhone, that takes some 295 pounds of raw material just to make that very light and slim and sleek smartphone. So that adds up. That is a rate that we cannot continue to mine and mine and mine forever. So we need to be conscious of that. Additionally, there's the production, right? And looking at laptops as an example, annual global laptop production produces the emissions equivalent of 15 million cars running on the road per year. So that's a lot of emissions. That's more, unsustainable mining. It's also a considerable amount of waste and pollution that ends up in our, water and in our soil. But the benefits of right to repair wouldn't only detract from that, right? Wouldn't only help to move us in the right direction. It would also benefit small businesses and consumers. So for one, repair jobs are local jobs, right? Instead of packing up your device and shipping it overseas to some depot where it's going to get repaired, you can go down to Main Street and have a member of your community actually fix your device, right? That keeps those resources here. Not to mention the fact that, it probably gets you your device back faster than having to wait for shipping and everything else. One example of this, right? Camera shops. There used to be a camera repair shop on every Main Street, but as repair materials were taken away and as the camera makers worked to move to more depot repair, you don't see those kind of businesses anymore. You don't see those kind of jobs. But this is also good for consumers, right? And when consumers have repair options and choose repair rather than replace, they can save big. So PIRG, or Public Interest Research Group, research estimates that Americans could save nearly $50 billion a year by repairing rather than replacing a number of common household electronics. So overall, House Bill 4562 is a really important step. We've seen significant progress, as close as Minnesota, but also across the country. And I just wanted to thank you again for hearing this important issue and urge your aye vote.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Gay Gordon Byrne. Gay Gordon from repair.org.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm really very, very pleased to be here. This has been my world for 10 years. The Repair Association was founded in 2013 in order to make sure that we were able to restore our right to fix our stuff. We've seen a trend in monopolization of repair, which is both illegal under antitrust law and also the kind of law that states can control through general business law. So I'll give you a little example. Why is right to repair so important? Because if you can't fix your stuff, you're going to have to throw it away, buy new, or do without. And Kevin mentioned that throwing away has its own consequences. And recycling is truly not the answer. I think we've seen a lot of municipalities and states try to recycle more, but it's extremely difficult. It winds up costing money and not saving money. We have a lot of work to do so that manufacturers will create products that are more recyclable. Buying new is an affordability problem for most Americans. The majority of us can't just go out and buy a new refrigerator or a new toaster oven every time something goes wrong. And then not having access to technology, particularly for students, is why we have a digital divide. So in my opinion, it behooves us to try to make sure that people can repair their stuff as a very practical, necessary step in what it means to own your stuff. So the goal of the legislation as we drafted it and as we've worked with 45 other states is that we're going to restore competition for repair services to all owners because we are owners and not renters. The distinction is very important. If we buy something and then we're told we didn't really buy it, there's been some deception there, which is why this statute that is being proposed goes to statutes against unfair and deceptive acts and practices, because you really did buy something and then somehow in some process you lost the options that you had when you first bought it. So the legislation is very simple. It is only one active sentence. If you want to do business in Michigan, you have to make sure that your customers of your product can acquire on fair and reasonable terms all the materials and information needed to repair their purchases. The things that are not in the bill, which is often accused, there are no design mandates in this bill. There are design mandates in the world, but they're not from this legislation. We have no documentation formatting requirements. Whatever manufacturers already produce, they produce, and we're going to deal with that. No one has to build a tool that doesn't already exist. That may become a problem down the road, but it's not in this legislation. And all the manufacturer has to do to comply is sell what they've already built for purposes of repair and make it possible for their customers to continue to enjoy their purchases. Now, just a last statement here. Nothing about this bill changes any other laws. There's no changes in this bill that affect copyrights, patents, or trade secrets. There's no changes to any licensing or security requirements that already exist. There's no changes to cybersecurity. As Paul mentioned, you've even got a device that's been created to be secure, or it isn't, and no amount of repair is going to change that. There's nothing impacting branding or marketing or smoke and mirrors. And fundamentally, when it comes down to it, because this is a monopolization issue, it doesn't really matter which product it is. If the repair is monopolized, it's unfair and deceptive. It's your choice, obviously, as legislators, to decide where you want the edges of this bill to fall. So if you think that it's important that consumers be able to fix their toasters and their refrigerators and their computers and nothing else, that's your choice. We're not demanding in any way that you expand or detract from this bill. It's entirely your choice. I believe you've already made some of those selections. So I urge a yes vote, and we'd like to see this move. Thank you.
Thank you. Now wishing to speak in opposition is Michael Blank, who also has written testimony. So I'm going to go through the cards, and we have written testimony from Michael Tyler Deers, Jesse McCardle, Eric Wareham, and Christine Simon. No, we don't have written from Simon. So we will start with who has not submitted written, Matt Morse, who wishes to speak in opposition.
Thank you, Chair and committee. I'm joining you here from Minnesota, state that's been mentioned numerous times. I'm policy counsel for People for Bikes. We're the trade association for the United States bicycle industry. We represent about 320 member companies that manufacture bicycles, bicycle products, and including electric bicycles, also known as commonly as e-bikes. We have about 100-year history through predecessor trade organizations of working to promote cycling and e-bikes, and working with both federal and state regulators to come up with common sense regulations governing their safety, their manufacturing, and their use on public streets and roads, including importantly Michigan Statute 257.662A, which recognized our three-class model law for regulating e-bikes and their use. Bicycles are probably one of the most repairable products out there. Many of you may have worked on them even as a child. They are designed to be repairable. Bicycles, many of them from the 70s and 80s, are still in use today, thanks to the ability and the accessibility of repair parts, and importantly, those independent bike shops in virtually every community across the country. There's an outstanding network for repairing bicycles and e-bikes that already exists, and many of those dealers are independently owned, or mom and pop or mom and mom shops these days are starting to be more common. So we don't see that much of a problem with consumers not being able to repair electric bicycles. Electric bicycles are different in their electrical drive systems. They use powerful lithium-ion batteries. They have a complicated battery management system that controls and monitors that battery during use and during charging. And they have advanced drivetrains that are used to power the electric bicycle. Recently, we have seen issues with particularly low quality batteries, and also with consumers attempting to repair their e-bikes in their homes, including trying to refurbish the batteries by replacing individual cells, opening the battery pack, or changing the power settings on those e-bikes to enable them to exceed the speed limits that are set by the 3-class law in Michigan and in 41 other states. This has been an issue that's been recognized by the New York City Fire Department that's dealt with a number of these fires. They've had at least 2 fires that have been traced directly to people attempting to refurbish batteries and with tragic results. We recently testified at a forum in front of the CPSC on battery safety and with leading battery experts from across the country. And there was universal agreement that consumers should not attempt, no one should attempt to service a lithium-ion battery other than the manufacturer and in a controlled setting. In fact, emerging standards for e-bikes require that the system be tested and certified as a whole, with the drive system, controlling circuitry, and the battery and charger all tested together, so that modifying any of those would render the system non-certified and non-compliant.
So we've noted your opposition, and I still have about 6 people that wish to speak. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I would, thank you. We believe that the Michigan should follow the lead of New York, which has recognized these issues with particularly with battery safety, and exclude electric bicycles from this bill. Otherwise, we are a huge supporter of electric bicycles and actually have developed a recycling program for end-of-life batteries that will reclaim about 90% of the raw materials so that they can be reused for additional batteries. I would rest on my written testimony, and certainly I'm ready for any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. No questions? Thank you. Next up, we have Andrew O'Connor from the Entertainment Software Association.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Carter and members of the committee. As you noted, my name is Andrew O'Connor from the Entertainment Software Association. We are a trade association representing video game publishers and game console manufacturers. ESA respectfully opposes House Bill 4562. We have submitted written comments to the committee and have submitted amendments to Representative Coleman, so I'll be brief in my remarks today. The biggest concern that this bill poses to our industry is that it fails to address copyright protections, which can lead to piracy and illegal modifications that can compromise gameplay. The broad language in the bill would force console makers to hand over sensitive and protected tools, which could compromise the vital security features on the consoles. Technological protection measures, or TPMs, protect not only the console, but also protect the copyrighted games that are played on the console. These tools are not widely distributed or closely guarded because of the protections they offer. These locks are protected at the federal and international levels. In fact, Section 1201 of the U.S. Copyright Act prohibits trafficking in tools which would permit someone to circumvent these digital locks. Compromising these locks will allow games to be pirated and allow for illegal games to be played on consoles. Currently, those protections prevent both of those. So by circumventing that, that would lead to piracy and huge issues for our industry. While we recognize that the vast majority of the repair shops that would be requesting these tools would not have illegal or nefarious motives behind them, the reality is, in today's world and the way information can and will spread rapidly, all it takes is for a few bad actors to have a severely detrimental impact on our industry. Lawmakers in New York and Minnesota, when they passed their similar right to repair legislation last year and this year, respectively, recognized these concerns and agreed to carve out video game consoles entirely. Similar language was also accepted in the California bill, which has been noted a couple times, seems well on its way to final passage. ESA worked with these lawmakers and proponents of the bill to come to this agreement, and we look forward to working with you all here in Michigan. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and thank you to Representative Coleman for agreeing to work with us on this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. And for any written testimony, it will be uploaded to the website. Next, we have Michael Blank from CTIA.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. As you said, my name is Mike Blank, and I'm speaking on behalf of CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Communications Industry, in opposition to HB 4562 related to digital repair. The marketplace provides a wide range of consumer choice for electronic product repair without the mandates imposed by this legislation. For example, manufacturers have relationships with authorized repair providers. These providers, which include small businesses in Michigan, have received the appropriate training for manufacturers to help ensure that repairs are done properly and safely. In addition, manufacturers offer walk-in repair options at retail, as well as mail-in services. Insurance providers also offer repair options for consumers, including authorized third-party remote technicians that will travel to the consumer to perform repairs. Consumers can use independent repair providers today, although manufacturers cannot guarantee the quality assurance of independent repair providers. Further, manufacturers have expanded repair options for consumers, from growing the number of authorized repair providers to increasing access to tools, parts, and manuals that go directly to consumers. To further address the repair marketplace, CTIA, our organization, launched the Wireless Industry Service Excellence Program, or the WISE program. It educates and tests wireless repair technicians on industry-recognized standards. Today, there are more than 3,000 WISE certified locations and over 18,000 WISE certified technicians. We are concerned this bill will have the unintended consequences of eliminating the need for repairers to demonstrate to consumers that they have the technical competence to perform safe, secure, and reliable repairs. Consumers expect and rely on the safety and security of their electronic products. This bill is an unnecessary intervention into the marketplace, and for these reasons, CTIA opposes this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Tyler Dyers from TechNet.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Tyler Dyers. I serve as the Midwest Executive Director for TechNet. TechNet is a technology trade association representing 99 member companies, many of which are original equipment manufacturers. We are in opposition to this bill. The issue of digital repair has evolved a lot over the last decade. As Mike had mentioned previously, consumers currently have a variety of professional repair options. This includes independent repair providers or utilizing the manufacturer's authorized repair network. There are repair services that will come to your home or business. There are repair services that allow you to mail in your device. There are even repair options for individuals that seek self-repair. I highlight this because when this issue first came about a little over 10 years ago, many of these options in their current form simply did not exist. And if a consumer still wishes to bring their device to an unaffiliated, unvetted third-party repair shop, there is nothing preventing them from doing so. They own the device and they can choose to have it serviced where they like. But what this legislation would do is it eliminates the security and privacy protections that manufacturers have put in place that benefit consumers. By establishing relationships with authorized repair providers, manufacturers can ensure that the technicians receive the appropriate training and have relevant qualifications so that repairs are done properly and safely. These are also contractual relationships, which ensure that bad actors can be held accountable. Consider the amount of sensitive and personal data that is stored on your phone or your computer. There was a recent study that came out that found that privacy violations occur far too often when consumers seek computer or phone repairs. According to that study, recovered logs from devices in half of the commercial shops studied found that personal data was not only accessed, but also copied to personal devices belonging to the technicians themselves. So because of this, we have concerns with language contained in the bill, beginning on page 7, line 4, that would require OEMs to disable service security locks, device security locks, or other security-related functions to independent repair shops. Furthermore, the bill fails to acknowledge the critical cybersecurity infrastructure that could be impacted by this legislation. As currently written, this bill would apply to critical infrastructure sectors whose assets, systems, and networks are considered so vital to the United States that if these systems were compromised, the result would have a debilitating effect on security, national economic security, national public health, and safety, which is why we believe there should be a business-to-business and a business-to-government exemption. On e-waste, I know it was covered. I just want to highlight that for a quick second. The most recent EPA data shows that e-waste generation has declined about 5% annually. This EPA data is corroborated by a recent study by Yale and Rochester Institute of Technology researchers, which concludes that e-waste generation in the United States peaked at 2015 and is in a period of extended decline. In closing, we appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today and appreciate the sponsor's willingness to hear the industry's concerns. And for the reasons stated in my testimony, we caution this committee with advancing the legislation as is without current or further changes to the current text. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Jesse McArdle, who wishes to speak in opposition and also has submitted written testimony.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jesse McArdle. I am the Midwest Policy and Engagement Manager for the National Marine Manufacturers Association. By way of introduction, NMMA is the leading trade association of boat, marine engine, and accessory manufacturers. And before I get into my testimony, I just want to quickly mention that the boating industry has a substantial direct and indirect annual economic impact of $11.7 billion in Michigan annually, supporting 45,000 jobs and 1,478 businesses. Appreciate you giving me this moment this morning to express our opposition to HB 4562 as written. Although we see several different concerns with this legislation, I'm going to primarily focus today on our concerns with our manufacturing members having to violate federal law through complying with this bill. So when you look at the modern day state of play in the marine industry, marine consumers have a wide variety of repair options available to them. If you walk into virtually any marine dealership in North America today, you can purchase parts, anything from a very small, quarter meter size fuel injector to an entire lower unit of a boat. And then when you look at some of the technological fixes, you can purchase, anything from diagnostic tools and information to detect different error codes to the manuals needed to decipher those codes to make very complex technological repairs to your equipment. So the marine industry has a strong history of providing a wide variety of repair options to our consumers. However, today, that level of access is somewhat limited by US EPA and the Clean Air Act. In accordance with the Clean Air Act and US EPA mandates, marine manufacturers are unable to provide access to any pollution control device equipment contained within their products. And this comes into play particularly when we look at marine engines, which have emission control devices. And it's worth noting that on November 23rd, 2020, Susan Parker Bodine, EPA Assistant Administrator for Enforcement and Compliance Assurance, stated tampering with emission controls is a federal offense. Manufacturers are the gatekeepers. They must ensure that access to the software controlling an engine's emissions only be made available to those who can be expected to adhere with Clean Air Act mandates and to keep emission tolerances within federally required levels. OEMs must limit access to these highly regulated sections of software to factory-trained and certified technicians. And even then, some access points are only available to representatives of the manufacturer. As we see it, HB 4562, would put our members in a position where they would have to make available these locked sections of software as well as pollution control devices. And on top of that, they would also have to provide the access codes to reset those locked sections of emission control software once they've been detected to have been breached. And frankly, our members cannot, in compliance with federal law, provide access to those protected areas of software. So as we see it, HB 4562, is certainly intended to provide the general public with the ability and means to fix their own equipment, and the marine industry fully appreciates that. However, in practice, we are concerned that what it will do will be to enable individuals to violate federal emission standards and temper with emission control devices within their equipment. So for these reasons and others, we respectfully oppose this legislation and would ask that the committee oppose it or amend the bill to exclude all marine electronics and off-road vehicles. So I thank you very much for giving me a moment of your time today, and that concludes my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. And next we have Eric Wareham from the North American Equipment Dealers Association, who has also submitted written testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Eric Wareham. I represent the North American Equipment Dealers Association. We are an international trade association that represents about 4,500 farm, industrial, and outdoor power equipment dealers across North America. We have 92 member locations in the state of Michigan. And I'm here today to oppose HB 4562 in its current form. We have had conversations with Representative Coleman's office and hope to continue that dialogue. At the current moment, farm equipment, agricultural equipment is exempted from the bill, and we received that in the markup draft 2 that came out yesterday. Real quick, on the repair landscape for our industry, I think it's important to note, even if farm equipment's not involved in this, that our industry is a leading example of one that supports customer self-repair. The vast majority of repairs done in our industry are performed by owners or independent repair shops. And that's was corroborated by a third-party study that was conducted of our industry a couple of years ago that showed that over 60% of repair parts sold at a dealership go out the door, meaning they're not installed by the dealership. Our industry is transparent and accountable when it comes to self-repair. We're transparent in the sense that we make known what is available: parts, tools, documentation, diagnostics, and we actually coincidentally have a dealer demonstration being held today, about 30 minutes outside Lansing in Portland, Michigan. 4 legislators and your counterparts that are on the House Ag Committee and leadership. And we also are accountable to our customers through our MOUs, memorandums of understanding, that our industry has signed now with 5 of the major manufacturers, and the American Farm Bureau Federation have entered into an MOU that covers about 80% of the farm equipment sold in the United States. And there's huge reputational risk involved for breaching those MOUs, much like the automotive industry that has those in place as well, are exempted from many of the bills, right to repair bills across the country. We appreciate Representative Coleman working with us. However, in its current form, our dealer members, as I stated, we represent not only farm equipment, but also outdoor power equipment and industrial equipment. The bill HB 4562 does not currently exempt those industries, along with several others. Our association is a member of the Illegal Tampering Coalition, which is about nearly 30 associations across the country that are opposed to right to repair legislation in this form. And the exemption language from our Illegal Tampering Coalition has been adopted in both New York and Minnesota that have been previously mentioned. I'll wrap up by saying that we've had work on HB 4673, which is a similar right to repair bill that is specific to farm equipment. We've put in hundreds of hours at this point with stakeholders around that bill. And we'd like to continue that effort and those conversations with Representative Miller and the House Ag Committee. So I thank Representative Coleman for recognizing that, although I think that we need some further amendments to ensure that we can focus on that bill that's specific to our industry and not this one. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. We have not wishing to speak but opposes the bill, Dustin Brighton from Brightstone Bridge. Not wishing to speak but opposes the bill, Nikki Poland, Michigan Boating Industries Association. Not wishing to speak and opposes the bill, John Keene of the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers. Not wishing to speak and opposing the bill is Nathan Kark, Michigan Cable Telecom Association. Not wishing to speak and in opposition of the bill, Christine Simon from John Deere. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Bob Wolfer, Bradford White Corporation. Not wishing to speak and opposing the bill, Walter Alcorn, Consumer Technology Association. Thank you all for your testimony. Okay. We will now take up House Bill 4177. The committee will go at ease.
The committee will come back to order. Chair Carter, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This legislation is molded after and seeks to do exactly what the legislature has done previously for the Detroit Institute of Arts and the Detroit Zoo. It is enabling legislation that authorizes any county to establish a history museum authority. Under this legislation, as with the others, if a county chooses to establish such an authority, the authority is authorized to seek a millage up to 0.4 mills for the two qualified museums, Detroit Historical Society and Charles H. Wright. If the voters in the county approve the millage, the authority then authorizes to contact with a qualified history services provider, in this case Charles H. Wright and Detroit Historical, for services and benefits to the residents of the county approving the tax. The authority is subject to the Open Meetings Act and FOIA. The election must be held at the election dates legally allowed by state law. As with the DIA and the Detroit Zoo, the Charles H. Wright and Detroit Historical Society are publicly owned by the city of Detroit, but provide history museum services for the entire state. Oakland and Wayne County are the only two counties contemplating for this millage. Polling data from Oakland and Wayne County is very favorable, with the data indicating up to 70% voter support. Unlike the DIA and the Zoo, there are no plans for Charles H. Wright and Detroit Historical will not be seeking the creation of an authority or a millage in any other county. The museums are required to work with the authority to offer benefits and services and preferences to the tax-paying counties. In the case of DIA and the Zoo, these types of benefits and preferences and services have been senior days, school programs, reduced or free memberships, free admission, senior programming, and others as negotiated between the authority and the provider. An annual audit is required to the county and its authority. What I'd like to do is turn this over. What we're doing is mirror legislation consistent with the Detroit Institute of Arts and the Detroit Zoo. So I have two experts here from the Detroit Historical Museum and the Charles H. Wright Museum who will take the lead, and then we'll answer any questions if you guys have them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, and members, appreciate your sponsorship and excellent description of the bill. I was going to offer some comments on the bill, but you did it, so thank you. It was excellent and describes exactly what it is. I just add maybe one thing. This is modeled, like the chair described, after legislation we did with previous legislatures for the DIA and the Zoo. It was drafted actually by Jerry Poizon, who was then Corporation Counsel for Oakland County at the direction of L. Brooks Patterson, who was insistent on saving these publicly held venues for the region. So that's kind of its genesis. We actually it's a reintroduction of a bill. It was introduced last session by Senator Bullock, who we had it up in the Senate, and it was reported unanimously from Senator Horn's committee on economic development last summer, with unanimous support out of committee. but we ran out of time in the Senate. So a lot of thanks to Representative Tyrone Carter and Senator Sylvia Santana for reintroduction this year. And there's agreement, I think, among the leadership to run the chair's bill if the committee and the process is so inclined. So at any rate, with that, let me introduce Alana Rue, who will say some things about the Detroit Historical Museum, and then Neil Barclay, who will say some things about Charles H. Wright.
Thank you, Kirk, and thank you, Representative Carter, so much. It's great to have the opportunity to meet with everyone today. As Kirk said, my name is Ilana Rue. I'm very proud to be the president and CEO of the Detroit Historical Society. I'm the first woman to lead the organization in its 102-year history. Our work at the Detroit Historical Society is to tell the entire Detroit region's stories, our truths, and why they matter. The Historical Society was founded in 1921. And we tell Detroit stories through our two museums, the Detroit Historical Museum and also the Dawson Great Lakes Museum on Belle Isle. We're also the caretakers of the region's artifacts, which number almost 300,000, and they are stored out at historic Fort Wayne. Over the last 102 years, our team has worked to create exhibitions that are now recognized as some of America's best. This year already, visitors have come to our museums from more than 500 different zip codes in Michigan, as well as from every other state in the U.S. and 41 countries. But even with this, having just celebrated our centennial, as we work to really envision the next 100 years for the Detroit Historical Society, we are challenged to protect our cultural legacy of our past, present, and our future. This is truly an existential time for the Detroit Historical Society. Our institution has been underfunded for decades. Our buildings are, the Dawson Great Lakes Museum is 63 years old, the Detroit Historical Museum is 72 years old, and the collection is stored in a World War II era bunker. So we face major challenges. We have depleted reserves, critical deferred maintenance, and significant collection conservation challenges. Our neighbors and colleagues at the right face similar challenges, and so recognizing the alignment of our missions and our shared commitment to this region, we have partnered and worked together on this effort to change the trajectory of our institutions. So we're here together in support of House Bill 4177, asking you to empower Oakland and Wayne counties with the ability to establish public authorities similar to those which already exist for the zoo and the DIA. The people of Southeast Michigan can ensure a strong future for our institutions by providing a reliable stream of public support that will sustain the work that we began over 100 years ago to protect culture and preserve all of our history. And we think that when we put our world-class cultural assets, the Charles Wright, the Detroit Historical Museum, and the Dawson Great Lakes Museum, on equal footing with our region's other tremendous institutions, we're going to enhance the importance and competitiveness of the state of Michigan in the eyes of the nation and the world. More importantly, perhaps, by ensuring the future of our museums, we're also ensuring that our children and our grandchildren will have an opportunity to continue to learn the history of our state and our region and be proud of their place in it and be inspired to contribute to its future. My husband and I have 6 kids. I've spent my entire life in Oakland County, and I grew up going to the museums that I now run, which is the coolest thing ever. But I want my children and my grandchildren and yours to be able to continue to enjoy these museums and learn from them in perpetuity. So obviously, for these reasons, I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. You see why we have partnered. Very articulate spokesperson for the DHS. I'm Neil Barclay. I have the great privilege of being the president of the Charles H. Wright Museum at this critical moment in its history. The Charles H. Wright Museum, as some of you may know, is a 60-year-old institution, and in 2000, well, it will be 60 in 2025. It is the nation's oldest encyclopedic museum of African American history, and until they built the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., was also its largest. So this is an important asset, not just for Michigan, but for the country. And we continue to serve not only a regional or local Detroit audience, but a regional, a national, and international audience. Currently, we are facing about $25 million in deferred maintenance. That would be if we were able to write a $25 million check today. As you know, construction costs and as well as labor are escalating quite dramatically in the present moment, 5 to 8% a year. So the more that we delay, the more expensive that these repairs will become. And it's important to note that the Charles H. Wright Museum is not like an office building. It requires very special air handling, humidity controls, security controls that a museum has to have in order to preserve the artifacts and the work of art that is contained therein. And the entire collection of the Wright, unlike some of the DHS's collection, is actually held in that building. It is 35,000 artifacts, some important aspects of African American history and culture, by extension, the culture and history of all Americans. Because our history has not just touched African Americans, but has touched all areas of American life. If we look on just the historical side, we know in music, Motown, jazz, electronica, civil rights movements, the women's suffrage movement, largely led by African American women, but by all women, and the Voting Rights Acts and movements were all led by African Americans and have become a critical part of American society and what we all consider to be American life. On the cultural side, we not only show art and historical exhibitions, but we've also served as the final resting place for some of the most seminal figures in America, including Rosa Parks, Aretha Franklin, and Judge Damon Keith. So this is a time when we feel it is necessary to ensure that this legacy is not only able to be seen and enjoyed by our present-day citizens, but where we preserve it for generations to come. I'll leave it at that.
Are there any committee questions? Rep. McFall?
I don't have a question as much as I have a statement. I'm very much in support of this. You both are located within my district, actually, so and are real gems for the Metro Detroit area and for the entire state. So I appreciate both of you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rep. Oregon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being here, guys. Just a real quick question. In the analysis that I'm looking at, I think, ma'am, you mentioned that this legislation is modeled after kind of how we went after dollars for the Detroit Zoo, right? So I guess my question is, why is there a necessary change? Like if we already have something similar for like the zoo for the zoo for the Tri-County area, why can't we? Why do we need new legislation for this particular issue?
If I can, Mr. Chair. The zoo legislation was developed at a similar existential moment for the zoo. They actually had a plan to ship animals because it was ready to close. So like I described, we had Jerry Poison and actually the Jaffe Law Firm write that bill explicitly for the zoo, and what that bill, or what that statute now allows, is for a zoological authority to be created in any county. There's actually 5 eligible zoos in that bill, but it's only for zoos. It only allows for a zoological authority to be created, and then if an authority is created by a county, they can contract with an eligible provider, in that case a zoo, for those zoological services. Same thing with the DIA. It was an art services authority. Here we're talking about a history services authority.
Got it. So those are specific, if you don't mind, just a quick follow-up. So those are specific to the subject, not this is a way to set up a millage for the greater good of the community. So that was zoo, then art, and now this is going towards historical museums.
Yeah, that's correct.
Got it.
Rep. Wenzel?
Thank you. So that was cleared up. My question was cleared up with Rep. Aragona's question a little bit. But my first job out of college was the programs director at the North Berrien Historical Museum. Love museums, love history, and thank you for all that you're doing to protect that and educate people. So I was when I worked at the museum, we were only the second museum in the state to be funded by a millage. Our community supported us, and that's how we still are funded in North Berrien County. My understanding that's because that's by municipality and not by county. Is that the difference that I'm understanding here?
If I can, a couple things. One, they may have had room within their statutory millage to do so. There isn't that sort of room in any of these counties to fit within the statutory allowed millage. So in order to go beyond, we have to have statutory to do so. Plus, in compliance with Headley, and certainly the spirit of Headley, we want to make sure it goes to the voters. So those are some of the considerations that went into doing these separately from what might otherwise. In Grand Rapids, actually, ultimately, in Kent County, we did stay within the millage authority of Kent County because they had room. We started out to run a bill. We didn't need to at the end of the day, but they have this similar kind of model with a service contract and value added to the taxpayers in Kent County for both the zoo and the public museum over there. In these cases, they don't have millage capacity because of the way local government finances developed literally since I was here in a sad way. They just don't have room within the millage cap.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony. The committee will now go at ease.
We'll come back in session. Wishing not to speak but in support of the bill is Brian Shelf from the Detroit Regional Chamber. Wishing not to speak but is neutral, Rob Mass, Michigan Department of Treasury. Shifting gears, we'll now vote on House Bills 4600 and 4601. I need a motion to report House Bills 4600 with recommendation. Rep. McFall moves to report the bill. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely? Yes. Scott?
Yes.
Young? Grant? McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Pass.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer?
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 nays, 11 days, 0 nays, 2 passes. House Bill 4600 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I knew. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, Maddie Lentine from Common Citizens and Kevin McKinney from the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. I need a motion to report out House Bill 4601 with recommendations. Rep. Mueller moves to report the bill. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young? Grant? McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Pass.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer?
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 yeas, 0 nays to pass. This House Bill 4601 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to Senate Bill 262, I need a motion to report the bill with recommendation. Rep. Liberati moves to support Senate Bill 262 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young, Grant, McFall,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Filler,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. Senate Bill 262 is reported with recommendation.
I have a couple cards to read in, wishing not to speak, but in support. Frank Veneto from American Council of Life Insurers. Wishing not to speak in support of Marcia Hoon, Michigan Insurance Association of Michigan. Wishing not to speak in support of Mandy Bolter, MHSA, Great Lakes Partnership. Wishing not to speak but in support of the bill, Rob Anderson, Farm Bureau. Wishing not to speak but in support of the bill, Jared Rozowski, Michigan Funeral Directors Association. We need a motion to excuse absent member. Oh, we didn't vote 268. Moving on to 268. We will need to report 268 out with recommendations. Rep. Scott moves to report Senate Bill 268 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter?
Yes.
Representatives Liberati?
Yes.
Neely?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Young? Grant? McFall?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Filler?
Yes.
Wenzel?
Yes.
Aragona?
Yes.
Beerline?
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. Senate Bill 268 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We need a motion to excuse absent members. Rep. Snyder moves to excuse absent members from today's committee hearing. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.